across the West Midlands on 95.6 FM. The Other Side of, with Ed Doolan on BBC WM.
Hello, Ed Doolan here, and welcome to the other side of living legend, Noddy Holder.
I won't laugh at you when you boo-hoo-hoo, 'cause I love you. I can turn my back on the things you like, 'cause I love you. I just like the things you do. Don't you change the things you do. You get me in a spot, that's how the smile you got when I love you. You make me out a clown and you put me down, I still love you. I just like the things you do. Don't you change the things you do. Bite your lip, you're gonna flip your flip, but I love you. When we're miles apart, you still reach my heart. How I love you. I just like the things you do. Don't you change the things you do. Only time can tell if we get on well, 'cause I love you. All that's past us by, we always side, 'cause I love you. I just like the things you do. Don't you change the things you do. No, no, no. La, 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 la,
Noddy, hi, good day.
You sweet talker, Ed. That's a living legend. I like it, yes.
But you are, mate.
Thank you very much.
You are. Was it always going to be music for you?
It was always going to be music once I'd discovered rock and roll, certainly. But prior to that, I probably had my sights set on being a school teacher, maybe a history teacher or an English teacher. But I was singing in working men's clubs way back from 1953 when I was 7 years old. First song I ever sang was on stage was at Walsall Labour Club. It was sort of free and easy night because my dad used to sing around all the clubs, and free and easy night. And I sang a song called I Believe, which was Frankie Lane's version, the original version, which was number one at the time in 1953. And I got up on stage, sang it with that little soprano voice of mine, and brought the house down, and it was downhill all the way. Then I had a taste of the applause, and then it was downhill. And so showbiz was in my sights. My dad loved music, and we had an old radiogram in the front room where he used to buy the old 78s. So he had lots of favourites he used to play, and one of his favourites was Al Jolson. He always used to love Al Jolson, And one of my first choices of music I've picked for the show is an Al Jolson song, and it's one he used to sing around the clubs, but he always used to sing it to me mum as well. It's an oldie called You Made Me Love You.
You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me want to. And all the time you knew it. I guess you always knew it. You made me happy sometime. You made me glad. But there were times, baby, you made me feel so bad. You made me cry for. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you. I want some love, that's true. Yes, I do, indeed I do, you know I do. Gimme, 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 gimme what I cry for. You know you got the kind of kisses that I die for. You know you made me love you. I didn't want to tell you, I didn't want to tell you. I want some love, that's true. Yes, I do, deed I do, you know I do. Gimme, 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 gimme what I cry for. You know you got the kind of kisses that I die for. You know you made me love you.
Al Jolson, You Made Me Love You. That's just lovely. It always was lovely, and I love Jolson.
Well, he was an entertainer, and as I say, my dad was a huge fan, and I grew up with listening to Jolson records. And then when the movie came out, the Jolson story, I was taken to see it, and Larry Parks, who played him in the film, he did an absolutely great take on Jolson, and it also. It left an impression on me. All the things he did in his career, especially he was the first guy to actually put Sunday concerts on Broadway, so that all the people from the other shows would come along to watch him. He had such an ego. He had a massive ego. So he'd do his 6 nights a week in his own show, and then he'd put a concert on the Sunday for all the other shows to see to show everybody, this is how good I am. I'm number one on Broadway. All that sort of stuff used to impress me.
You'd never get him off, would you?
No, you couldn't drag him off.
I've never understood that. Like, if a show starts at 7:30 and it finishes at 10 or 10:30, it doesn't have to finish at 1:30.
Well, some entertainers are like that. If it's that much in your blood, some entertainers, they don't want to let it go. They don't want to let their audience go, especially if they're on a good night and the audience are really in raptures over them. They don't want to let that feeling go. That's why there's probably, in showbiz, so many people, crack up.
Noddy, you mentioned history and English at school, obviously favourite subjects.
Yeah.
Why?
It was always an interest to me. I always loved reading as a kid. Of course, in my youth, there was no PlayStation games or anything like that. You listened to the radio, even telly in my youth. We didn't have a telly right away. So you listened to the radio and you read books. And history and English lit was, because I read all the time. I was reading solidly right from a very young age. My mum reckoned, I don't know, but my mum reckoned I could recite nursery rhymes when I was about 18 months to 2 years old. So she always said. And, so it was always in my blood. I always loved to read and soak stuff up. I'm the same now. And history was always a favourite subject of mine. I was always good at it at school.
Are you reading anything at the moment?
No, but I actually, funnily enough, I went to my son's. He's in his first year of GCSEs now, and I went to my son's night where you have to decide, what subjects they're liable to take and stuff like that. And he was top in English in his year, and he was also top in history, but he wasn't taking history for his GCSEs, and the history teacher was going mad. And I said, well, what's the sort of curriculum for the, for this GCSE coming? And of course, it was the history of the 20th century. It was more modern history they were going to be doing. And I used to love reading all that. And then he was telling me that the sort of stuff they were going to be doing in the next 2 years for the curriculum for history. I says, I'll come and enrol. It's just my favourite subject, because I loved the period between the two world wars, when Prohibition and how the world had changed, how it was affected by the First World War up until the Second World War, and especially the history in Germany and stuff like that. And so I was really into that, and they were going to be doing that as the curriculum. So I was thinking of enrolling and doing the GCE course myself.
To any of our listeners who phoned in to hear this rock interview with Noddy Holder, there's a surprise.
It was when I discovered rock and roll, really, that it changed my course for career-wise.
So how did you discover rock and roll? What happened?
Well, I'd been listening to people like Tommy Steele and people like that on the radio, but then Elvis came along, and Bill Haley, and then Elvis. But the one that really shook me to the core was I went to see the movie The Girl Can't Help It, and I'd heard Little Richard on the radio, and didn't know what he looked like, didn't even realise he was a black guy necessarily. I just thought he was a rock and roll singer. And then I went to see the film The Girl Can't Help It with Jane Mansfield in it, and he was one of the acts in the film. I mean, it was very naff storyline, but they had all these great artists in the movie. And Little Richard came on screen singing The Girl Can't Help It with this backing band. And it was such a shock to me to see this guy with a big pompadour hairstyle, all greased up in the air, big shiny satin suit, all his band rocking and cooking behind him. He's standing up playing the piano. He was up there cooking. And it was just such shock tactics to me. And I thought, this is what I'd love to do.
I was going to say, Noddy, that unless you were alive at the time, you can't truly understand the huge impact
Not at all.
of Little Richard when he first cracked the scene.
That's right. It was just, it shocked me so much. Frankly, I shouldn't have been in the cinema. I'd have been probably, how old would I have been? I'd have been about 10 or 11. And so the movie wasn't a G-rated as it was, what they call it today. And a mate of mine who lived 2 doors from us, he let me in through the back door of the cinema. I used to go in and see all these Rock Around the Clock and all these sort of Wild Bunch and all these sort of movies. And anyway, when he came on the screen, Little Richard, I thought, this is just amazing. This is what I want to do. I want to be a rock and roll star.
Can't help it, the girl can't help it. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she walks by, the men folks get engrossed. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she winks an eye, the breast lights turn to toes. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she got a lot of what they call the moles. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. The girl can't help it, she was born to please. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. And if she's got a figure made to squeeze. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. Won't you kindly be aware? The girl can't help it, the girl can't help it. She mesmerizes every mother's son. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she smile and beefsteak become well done. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. She make grandpa feel like 21. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. The girl can't help it, she was born to please. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. And if I go to hell on bending knees. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. Oh, won't you kindly be aware that I can't help it? I can't help it. Because I'm hoping, obviously, that someday the answer would be the girl can't help it, that she's in love with me. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. If she winks an eye and the breast lights turn to toes, can't help it, the girl can't help it. She got a lot of what they call the moles. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. The girl can't help it, she was born to please. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. And if she's got a bigger made to squeeze, can't help it, the girl can't help it. I'm hoping, obviously, that someday the answer will be the girl can't help it if she's in love with me. Can't help it, the girl can't help it.
Little Richard there, the girl can't help it. And as I said to Noddy Holder before we played it, unless you were around in the 1950s, you've no idea the impact this music had.
It was just an amazing transformation for my life. And then, of course, I wanted to start to learn to play guitar then, because most kids at that time, you know, it was the one instrument you could accompany yourself on the old guitar. And I wanted to, you know, as I say, I'd been singing in the working men's clubs anyway, but I wanted to develop a more rock and roll-y type of voice. And I wanted to form my first band, but of course I had to take it one step at a time. And I wanted to learn the guitar, so my dad got me a guitar from an old second-hand shop, which was near our house. And my mum knew this guy called Freddie Degville, who used to play in a little sort of jazz quartet around Walsall and the West Midlands. And he was a fabulous guitar player, and she sent me to him to start to learn the elementary sort of techniques and a few chords and stuff like that. And when I went to meet him, I'd never seen him play, and I'd never seen a guy play close up before. I'd never seen anyone with a guitar actually playing close up live. And he put the guitar on, and he played what is going to be my next choice of music. He played a Django Reinhardt song. Now, at that time, I'd never heard of Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli and the Quintet of the Hot Club of France. And he played me actually Sweet Georgia Brown, which is still one of my favourites today that I actually play myself on jazz guitar. But I was so knocked out with his sound that he was getting. And I thought, oh, this is beautiful. I want to learn all different sorts of ways of playing the guitar. So I went then on to sort of explore Django Reinhardt and what he'd done. And of course, he was actually born in Belgium, but he became famous in France. He was a gypsy. He had a certain technique on guitar. He actually burnt his hand in a fire in a caravan, and he was left with only 2 fingers on his left hand. So he had to, after the fire, he had to learn to play guitar all over again, just with 2 fingers. And he became probably the greatest jazz guitarist that's ever lived.
So what are we going to listen to?
We're going to listen to one of his own compositions, which is absolutely beautiful.
Where did Slade come from?
I'd had bands. As I said, I started my first band at school, and I still see my mates who were in my first band at school. I still see a couple of them. We get together, and we do have a get-together and get the old guitars out, and I come back to the Midlands, and we have a night out, go for a curry, and then we go back to the hotel where I'm staying, go in the hotel bar, we get all the guitars out of the cars, and it's like we were back at school again, having a knock-up, playing old rock and roll and jazz stuff and blues stuff. So we entertain people all around us, usually very drunk, I might add. I had 2 or 3 bands before I actually met up with the guys that would eventually become Slade. That was 1966, and Dave and Don had a band called the In-Betweens at the time, and they were splitting that band up. I'd left the band I was with at the time, and they asked me to join them, and they'd already auditioned for a new bass player and got Jimmy was still at school at the time. He had joined them on bass, so it was just left for me to slot in, and we didn't know whether it was going to work or not, and we went to have our first rehearsal, a sort of secret rehearsal really, because Don and Dave's band didn't know that they were quitting the band. And we went to the 3 Men in a Boat, which was opposite my mum's house on the Beechdale estate in Walsall, and we had an afternoon rehearsal there. And right away, as soon as we struck up with one another playing the first tune, we knew we'd got something going. We just knew there was a feeling there that we could maybe get together and do something here. And so that's really how we became known as the In-Betweens originally. And then Slade came about really about 2 or 3 years later. We'd been to the Bahamas. We'd done a 16-week stint in the Bahamas, came back, and we'd been and auditioned in London for Fontana Records, a guy called Jack Baverstock, who was the head of Fontana Records. He had auditioned us, and what was the audition tape we'd been doing? He said, I'd like to put you in the studio for a week and just see what you come up with. Well, we weren't writing songs or anything at the time, so really we went in the studio for a week with no producer, just us and an engineer. And we put the stuff down that was really part of our stage show that we'd been playing all around the clubs and ballrooms all around the country. And Jack Baverstock at the end of the week came in and listened to the tapes, and he said, this is fantastic, I love this stuff. He said, I'm going to put it out as an album. And he said, but I don't like the name, the In-Betweens. He said, I want a new name. And we were trying to come up with other names over the next week or so, and we couldn't we come up with some real daft suggestions. One was, we were going to be called Nicky Nacky New at one point. There was all sorts of strange names got thrown into the melting pot. Anyway, Jack Baverstock came to us and he said, I've got a new name for you. It's Ambrose Slade. We weren't too keen on it at all, and he got the name from his secretary had named all different things on her desk. She used to give everything a name. So he'd taken two names of things on her desk and put them together and became Ambrose Slade. We didn't like it particularly, but we didn't like really to say anything. We thought we'll call ourselves anything. We wanted a record deal, you know, we really urgently wanted a record deal. And so we took the name Ambrose Slade. And then when Chas Chandler took us on, he came to the studio, he heard these things. The Chas Chandler used to be in the Animals, and he discovered, managed and produced Jimi Hendrix. He wanted to see us play live. He loved the tapes we'd put down. And he put us in a gig in London called Rasputin's in New Bond Street. And he came and saw us, loved the live show, and he signed us the next day. And really, it was him that got rid of the Ambrose off the name. He said, we've had enough of people getting the name wrong. People were calling us Arnold Slake, Amgo Shed. Nobody ever got it right. You know, it was always being misprinted. And in the end, we just knocked the Ambrose off and called ourselves Slade. And funnily enough, looking in the dictionary, it must have been fate or something. But in the dictionary, actually, Slade means earthy. So it fitted us to a T. It was, you know, it was fate that name landed with us.
Tell me, Noddy, where did the sound come from? Obviously, a lot of it must have been based on your amazing volume.
Well, we were a very loud band, even from the day we formed. We had a rig up that we actually discovered ourselves. We invented it ourselves. We actually stereoed all the amplification. This is way before we were successful. We actually amplified and stereoed the amplifiers on stage. So wherever you stood in the club or the ballroom, you could hear everything from us from all different sides of the stage. We didn't just plug into one amplifier. We split all the speakers up and everything. And every band that we used to play with, even some big names that we used to open for in those days, they couldn't suss how we'd done it. And it was just a very simple solution. And they always used to say, how did you get that sound? How can you possibly get that sound where you can hear it all around the stage?
Let me ask you a really boring question then, which I do so well. What's your hearing like?
My hearing's fine, actually.
Well, how the hell can it be if you were having that pumped into your head for the last 200
actually,
years?
it's not volume that hurts your hearing. It's the frequency. We actually was sent for hearing tests for a magazine. There was 5. They chose 5 of the loudest bands in the world. I mean, this was like in the 80s, after we'd had 20 odd years of blasting it out, and we went to have our ears tested along with Deep Purple and several other bands. And we went they put us in booths and they shot frequencies into our ears, and we had to press buzzers when we could hear certain frequencies. And we came out, pretty much all of us, with our hearing pretty much intact, except for Don. He'd lost a bit of the top end, and Dave, I think, had lost a bit of top end. But that was through cymbals. It was nothing at all to do with the amplification. It was the frequency of the cymbals crashing away that had taken the top end away from them. So it's not actually volume necessarily that hurts your ears. It's the frequencies of the top ends that damages your ear.
One other question. There's a reason I'm asking. Were you Goon Show fans?
Well, I was. The others probably. I don't know whether the others.
You know
were.
why
I
I'm asking?
Was.
Because of the Nicky Nacky Noo.
But Nicky Nacky Noo. There was a Goon connection because I don't know whether you remember. There was an organist called Graham Bond who used to have a band called the Graham Bond Organisation. They were an R&B band. And we were doing a university gig with him one night, and he was a Goons fan. And we were in the dressing room before the show started, and we were telling him about this name thing. We were trying to come up with names, and he said, "Well, you're one of the best bands I've ever heard since the Nicky Nacky New." And it was like just a saying that he had, and we thought, "Oh, that'd be a great band name, the Nicky Nacky New. You're the best band since the Nicky Nacky New." So it was actually the suggestion from Graham Bond organisation, which I think he did get from the Goons.
Introduce Aretha Franklin to us.
Well, this was one of my favourite artists. We were obviously, in our early days as the In-Betweens and then the Ambrose Slade days, we were playing a lot of cover versions because, as I said, we weren't originally writing ourselves. So we'd be doing a lot of Tamla, soul, a lot of R&B, a lot of cover versions. And one of the favourites, probably my favourite female singer of all time, was Aretha Franklin. And we used to actually do a lot of her songs on stage in the live set. And this was one we used to play. It's not one of her most famous, but it's one of her best songs ever. This is called The House That Jack Built.
This is a house that Jack built, y'all. Remember this house. This was the land that he worked by hand. It was the dream of an upright man. There was a room that was filled with love. It was a love that I was proud of. This is the life that he planned on the love, the same old love in the house that Jack built. The house that Jack built. Remember this house. There was a fence that held our love. Yes, it was. There was a gate that he walked out of. This is my heart, it is turned to stone. Yes, it is. This is a house, it ain't no home. This is a love that I destroyed on the day that I toyed with love in the house that Jack built. The house that Jack built. I'm gonna remember this house. Oh, what's the use of crying? You know I brought it on myself, there's no denying. But it seems awful funny that I didn't understand until I lost my upright man, yo. Up on the hill, everything stands still in the house that Jack built. The house that Jack built. I'm gonna remember this house. The house that Jack built. Listen, I got the house, I got the car, I got the rug, and I got the rack, but I ain't got Jack. Jack, and I want my Jack back. Jack, Jack, Jack. I turned my back on Jack, you said he wasn't coming back. I turned my back on Jack, you said he wasn't coming back. Oh, Jack, you ought to come on back. Come on, oh, Jack, come on back, Jack. You ought to come on back to the one that you built. Come on back, Jack. It's the same one that you built. Come on back, Jack. You ought to come on back, Jack. Come on, come on. Oh, now, Jack. Come on, oh, Jack, come on. I didn't understand until I lost my upright man. Come on back, Jack.
Ed Doolan on WM talking to Noddy Holder of Slade, or ex of Slade. Will Slade ever come together again, or have they
Not the
parted
original
forever?
lineup. No, I don't think the original lineup will ever reform. Dave and Don, of course, are still out on the road touring as a version of Slade, but I don't think the original lineup will ever reform. I think I think probably it's me that stood in the way all these years because I'd had enough. In 91, 92, I left the band and I'd been on the road for 25 years. The original lineup of Slade were together, which is almost unheard of for
Yeah.
a band to stay 25 years together with the same four guys. And I'd been obviously on the road 5 years before that with other bands as well. So 30 years on the road was a long time, and I was fed up of living out of suitcases. I didn't mind the on-stage part of it, but hotel rooms, dressing rooms, hanging around at airports, it gets wearing after 30 years of doing it. And we ended up doing album tour, year in, year out. And I didn't really want to spend the rest of my life playing Come On Feel the Noise and Merry Christmas. As much as I loved the songs, I didn't want to be doing it every night for the rest of my life.
Okay, that leads me straight into Merry Christmas, everybody. Where did that come from, and what a miracle it was?
Well, it was a suggestion from one of Jim's relatives, Jimmy the bass player's relatives, that it said, why have you never brought out a song that would be played every year, like a happy birthday or a Christmassy type song? And so we came up with Merry Christmas, everybody. And we recorded it in New York at the end of a really hot summer of 1973. And John Lennon was actually in the studio next door recording. And the chords that you hear at the start of the song were actually borrowed from him a harmonium. He got a harmonium in the studio, and we asked him if we could borrow it because we were trying to find this sound to intro the song. So it's actually John Lennon's harmonium you can hear on the start of the record. And really, when we recorded it, we were pretty sure we'd got a hit on our hands because we were top of the tree at the time. All our records were shooting to number one. We were pretty sure we might have a number one on our hands because everybody was raving about the record. But no way did we ever think that it would be going strong all these years later, 36 years later, in fact. I don't think any of us ever thought that. And it's become an integral part of Christmas for everybody now. It is a Christmas classic, and luckily for us, it turned into a little bit of a pension plan for us as well. And I think it's not dated. That's the great thing about it. Still comes on the radio, it still seems fresh, and it still hits every generation. I get young kids of 5 and 6 coming up to me and saying that, that they've just done it in their school concert. So it's carrying on. It's got a life of its own. And it's just, I don't know, it's the one that people will always associate with us. People do tend to forget we had 40 other hits, but it is the one everybody always forever associate with Slade.
Are you hanging up or starting on your wall? It's the time that every Santa has a ball. Does he ride a red-nosed reindeer? Does it turn upon his sleigh? Do the fairies keep it sober for a day? So here it is.
Could you imagine, Noddy Holder, could you imagine that years after you and I have gone, people will still be singing Merry Christmas, everybody?
Well, I hope they are. I think it'll be a nice legacy to leave, quite frankly. I hope it goes on and on and on. I think it has the right sentiments as well, because when we brought it out in 73, the country was in recession. Miners were on strike, bakers were on strike, electric workers were on strike, so television was going off at 10 o'clock at night. Grave diggers were on strike. It was a 3-day week. The country was at its lowest ebb. It was in a terrible state. And it was a very optimistic record. Look to the future now, it's only just begun. We couldn't have got any, that's what the lyrics are all about. And it's really a repetition today. The country's been at a low ebb for so long now. That's really why we've brought out the new Party Hits album, because we want to do our little bit to lift people's spirits up. So it's not a greatest hits compilation, the new album we've got out, but it's got some of the big hits on it. Obviously, Merry Christmas is on there, and 'Cause I Love You and Come On Feel the Noise. Some of the biggies are there, but there's a lot of party classics on there, and it's a big uplifting album. And I think people need it, especially at this time of year. People need an uplift. So we're doing exactly as we did it back in 1973.
You mentioned John Lennon,
Yeah.
and you've chosen one of his records.
Well, I did choose. I was going to choose a Beatles one, but I couldn't decide which one to pick. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I just couldn't pick on one. And I've always loved John Lennon. And this is one of those songs that just got to me when I heard it. It was right at the very end of his career. He recorded this. It's one of his solo songs, his solo record, and it's actually a song that people always ask me why I left the band. I left the band really, as I said earlier, because there was a big wide world out there I wanted to explore. I was getting all kinds of offers that I couldn't take up because of my band commitments, and I wouldn't be able to do it while I'm out on the road or whatever. And I wanted to start doing other things before it was too late. But people never understand this. They think you leave a band and they think there's nothing left in your life. But after 25 years, there was other stuff. I had another life after the band. And this song, Watching the Wheels by John Lennon, it's exactly the same as when he went. He had his 2 years sabbatical when he was looking after his son Sean in New York, and he ended up baking bread and stuff like that. And people couldn't understand that he didn't want to be in the limelight for a couple of years. He actually wanted to do something with his family and whatever. And people find it very hard to understand and get to grips why you do these things. And the sentiments in this song actually were how I felt when I left the band. People were always asking, what you left the band for? What you left the band for? And this is a sort of explanation. This is the explanation John Lennon gave, and it befits me. I wish I'd have written it actually, but this is Watching the Wheels, John Lennon.
People say I'm crazy, doing what I'm doing. Well, they give me all kinds of warnings to save me from ruin. When I say that I'm okay, well, they look at me kind of strange. Surely you're not happy now, you no longer play the game. People say I'm lazy, dreaming my life away. Well, they give me all kinds of advice designed to enlighten me. When I tell them that I'm doing fine, watching shadows on the wall. Don't you miss the big time, boy, you're no longer on the ball. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. No longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go.
I tell them there's no problem, only solutions. Well, they shake their heads and they look at me as if I've lost my mind. I told them there's no hurry, I'm just sitting here doing time. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. No longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go. I just had to let it go. I just had to let it go.
Noddy Holder, do you enjoy the fame?
I do enjoy the fame. I'm one of those strange people that I don't complain about the fame. I went into showbiz to become famous. I wanted other things as well. I love the music. I loved making money. I loved being able to chat up the ladies because I was a rock and roll star. You know, I loved all those things that are part of being in a rock and roll band. But I do enjoy it. I do actually enjoy. I like going out and doing the promotion. I like being on the TV. I like being on the radio. It's all, to me, it's all encompassing of the showbiz ethic. It is. I've always had it ever since I was a kid. You know, it's not left me.
But you
I
also
still perform now. I don't perform on stage as in a rock and roll band, but I still perform on TV. I still perform on the radio. I still perform. I still do acting. It's performing. It's just different sort of performing.
And you've got
that's
such
all.
a distinctive style of appearance, haven't you? You go for that.
Absolutely.
Very distinctive. Everybody knows you.
Absolutely, and I think it's something that stuck with me over the years, and people seem to like it, and I don't see any reason why I should change it. It's something that I'm very comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with my life now. I like being able to pick and choose what I do. I haven't got to answer to 3 other guys anymore. I pick and choose the jobs I take. I'm very lucky in that respect that I can do that, and I just pick things that I know I'm going to have fun doing. And I actually like my lifestyle. I like what I do. And every day a job will come in and it's a new challenge for me, be whether it's making an advert, be whether it's appearing on TV in a sitcom or whatever it may be. It's a new challenge and it's something very very different for me. And it keeps me alert. And I still love music. I still get my shot in the arm of music from my radio shows that I do regularly, So I've got all aspects going there, and I also I make sure now I'm not away from home for more than 2 weeks at a time because I've got a lad of 14. I miss my 2 eldest daughters who are now in their 30s growing up because I was away from home all the time. So that's the lifestyle I've chosen for myself now. The appeal, as you were asking me earlier, will the band ever get back together and whatever? It doesn't appeal to me. That lifestyle on the road doesn't appeal to me anymore.
Noddy Holder, a couple of quick questions. What's your favourite word?
My favourite word?
Yeah.
Oh, my word. I think rocking. Rocking is my favourite.
Said with much style. What is your least favourite word?
No. No is my least favourite. I don't think there's such a word as no. You can always get round it.
What turns you on creatively or spiritually?
Enthusiasm turns me on. My own enthusiasm and people around's enthusiasm.
And what turns you off?
Negativity. Negativity I can't stand. And lies. Negativity and lies turn me off totally.
Is there a sound that you love?
Sound I love. Guitar. All sorts of guitar sound. Be it jazz or rock or even bad guitar sometimes can sound good. Because if you've got a bad guitarist, you know very well that they're striving, they're trying. You know, as long as they're trying, it might be bad, it might be naff, but they're trying to get something out of the instrument.
And is there a sound that you hate?
Mobile phones going off in restaurants. Absolutely hate.
Okay, moving on. What profession, other than what you do, might you like to attempt?
I would still have liked to see how I'd have turned out as a teacher. I think I'd have been a really good teacher because I get on great with kids. I relate to kids. Kids love me because I treat them like adults. So I would still love to know, would I have been a good teacher? And I think I would.
Is there a profession that you wouldn't like to do, or a job you wouldn't like to do under any circumstances? You wouldn't want to touch it.
I wouldn't like to be a bomb disposal expert. No, I wouldn't like to do that. That's a bit dodgy. I met a guy once, actually, and he's actually got a restaurant halfway up a hill in Portugal. And he owns this restaurant. He's retired to Portugal to run this restaurant. And he's a sort of James Bond character, this guy. And he was a bomb disposal expert. So he says. He used to tell these fabulous stories. Whether they were true or not doesn't matter because they were just great stories. And he definitely saw himself as a James Bond type. But not only was he a bomb disposal expert, but he was an underwater bomb disposal expert. And he used to actually set the unexploded bombs off under the water, you know, to get rid of them, so ships and that didn't hit them. And the actual thrust of the water, when he used to actually, set them off, over the years, it's actually weakened all his bone structure in his body. So every time he's only got a step wrongly on an ankle or anything like that, all his bones sort of go all weird shapes and sizes, and it's through the blast of the water hitting him when bombs went off.
If heaven exists, Noddy, does it?
I don't think it's heaven with an old man sitting on a throne with a long white hair and a long white beard. But I think heaven exists. I think there is a place there where we're going to run into all our old mates and our mums and dads and our relatives and stuff like that.
Okay, so
I think there is another plane.
All right, so if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'd like him to... Oh, you've arrived, you can take over now. Noddy's God. With a small G, Noddy's God.
Noddy Holder, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. We're going to go out on Standing on the Corner, Slade, because...
It's on the brand new album, Slade's Party Hits.
Noddy Holder, thank you.
Thank